Now, as you may know, the opposition People's Democratic Party, or PDP, has accused the ruling All Progressives Congress, or APC, of brazen impunity in the rigging of elections in Nigeria and of using the judiciary to do its bidding during post-election court processes. The PDP, as well as the NNPP, say they'll not give up on their bid to overturn recent court decisions that have handed victory to the ruling party in Zamfara, Kano and Plateau states, in what the PDP described as ominous signs that the electoral and judicial systems are under threat and Nigeria's democracy is being compromised. The party says that the new trend appears to be that what the APC missed out on by way of victory on election day is being delivered to its candidates through the courts. So, what's the APC's response to this withering attack? Well, according to its National Publicity Secretary, Barrister Felix Morka, the PDP's attacks are aimed at blackmailing the judiciary into submission and is driven by a morbid apprehension that he may yet lose more seats. And to discuss that further, I'm joined now in the studio by the lawyer and National Publicity Secretary of the ruling APC party, Barrister Felix Morka. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you so much, Charles.
And that's a fairly scathing riposte there from you. I mean, that's not everything that you said, but that's a summary of it. In that sort of counter statement, Atiku Abubakar released a statement ahead of yours on Monday in which he accused the APC of brazenly rigging out opposition parties in elections and in post-election court processes, getting the judiciary to conspicuously, those are his words, do its bidding. What's your reaction to that?
Thank you so much, Charles. Just to say that the APC is a party that subscribes unreservedly to the tenets of the rule of law. We value the entire idea of the separation of powers between the arms of government, between the executive branch, the legislature, and the judiciary. And we do nothing to compromise it. Because if we do, then we don't have democracy. That's the idea of democracy. It's the opportunity for all of these three arms of government to thrive and flourish. Our party is a progressive party and will not engage in some of the really obnoxious acts that the PDP suggests that we are guilty of with respect to some of the decisions coming out of our courts. The PDP and Atiku, as I said in my statement this evening, are haunted by the ghosts from their inglorious past. Period. They want to taint the APC with that strategy, that approach that they completely executed in all of 16 years of the administration. Because they can't fathom, they can't even imagine a ruling party that is not, at the back end, manipulating the judiciary. They can't imagine that. But the APC is not. Because evidence abounds as to episodes, occasions, where these same courts, from the high courts to the Supreme Court, have come down heavily on the APC in this immediate dispensation under initially the Buhari administration. I was sitting there listening to my learned senior, the learned silk, Femi Falana, when he was speaking. And at the point I'm like, why am I here? He completely killed it. He laid it out. And I don't think I have a whole lot more to add to the very fine, erudite discussions that
well,
he had with you.
You can certainly add to the fact that he conceded
Yes.
that all the parties, but more especially the APC and the PDP, are guilty of trying to influence elections in their favor in a way that is extra legal.
Look, we can be more specific. What are we discussing? Kano, Plateau, Zamfara, especially.
Yeah.
Now, choose any one of those states and we can have a conversation. The APC has done nothing to attempt to pervert the justice of the matter in any one of those states. Nothing at all. Now, take, Plateau State. What happened in Plateau State? There were no congresses held in that state on the side of the PDP. There were multiple cases that were brought before the courts for adjudication. And the courts severally issued judgments that said to the PDP, while you have the time, you go and conduct congresses so you can actually have a legitimate legal structure for the party. Because in Nigeria, we do not have independent candidacy. So every contestant for any position from local government to the presidency must actually necessarily, come under the vehicle of a political party. And the court said, you do not have a legal, recognizable, and recognized structure of your party. Go and conduct congresses. The PDP completely ignored, disrespected, contemptuously disregarded the court's judgments on this point. They went ahead and fielded candidates for election. Now the same courts are back, saying to them, you cannot possibly have contested validly an election and be declared winner of an election when you in fact didn't have a legal, legitimate structure of your political party, prior to that election. Therefore, whatever you did, it was as though you never did. You see, contempt of court, which is what the PDP committed, is a crime. It's not a pre-election matter. It is a crime against the process. So, the PDP is being held accountable in Plateau State by the courts. And this is, the whole idea of the rule of law. You can't get away with your own criminality.
Right.
You can't disrespect the courts and expect actually to get the same court to certify your illegality. That is actually not a construct that is known to law and democracy.
There might be an argument there, but what is your sense of the ruling that's emerged in Kano?
Look, Kano is also very interesting, but it's not far-fetched. What happened in Kano? There were ballots that were presented and counted by INEC in Kano that were not certified by any kind of authentication as required.
Yeah, but INEC were the people who admitted it as part of the votes. So they ought to know what votes they will cancel or discount, and the ones that they don't. If they allow it to be admitted, doesn't that suggest that they who have the authority have authenticated that vote?
Charles, when a bank manager robs a bank, does that make it less a robbery? Because he is the custodian of the money in the bank.
Well, I don't think it's quite the same
No,
thing.
it is. No, wait a minute. What I'm saying, if the bank manager actually negligently or recklessly gives money that belongs to you, to me, at a bank, and therefore you are short of your money, does it make it my money necessarily because the bank manager was reckless or inadvertent to his duties as bank manager? It does not. The fact that INEC was itself the counter of those votes does not in any way imbue that process with any atom of validity. The courts are the courts. Now let's take a break. What are the courts? Where do the courts come from? Are these courts in Ethiopia? We hear of the Shimagales, some native courts that are cobbled together. Our courts were created by our constitution and endowed with specific authority to adjudicate cases between citizens and between citizens and the state. Now, that authority is actually beyond question and beyond the kind of ridicule that the PDP is seeking to drag the courts into. When the courts decide, and as they have decided in favor of the PDP, numerously, my learned senior who was here, Femi Falana, my dear brother, did give you specific cases. He cited Zamfara. He cited Bayelsa.
Yeah, but to be
David
fair,
Lyon.
it's obviously not beyond question, which is why you've got an appeals process.
No. What I'm saying...
You're talking about the
I'm talking
institution.
about the
generally.
institution.
Right, okay.
You cannot question their authority to adjudicate and to give verdicts.
Yeah.
You have a duty as a citizen and as a political party like the PDP, like the APC for that matter, to honor the decisions of the courts when that court is properly constituted. It is not up to you to cherry pick what decisions you celebrate and what you do not. You cannot celebrate the removal of David Lyon, who clearly won an election in Bayelsa, and actually, have Governor Diri today parading and, properly enjoying his authority as governor by force of a court judgment. And then on the other hand, every time a decision is given against you, you actually seek and call for the dismantling of that judicial institution.
But you can
that is beyond the pale.
But you
Charles.
can see the argument and the visceral feeling that goes into this when the people and their legitimate vote for someone are being discountenanced because of something that maybe INEC in its own error or whatever did. I mean, that's really the point. The penalizing a candidate who got a vote. I mean, the issue is not whether he got the vote. The issue is whether the ballot paper was authenticated by INEC. That's really the issue. Some people think of that as a spurious technicality.
No, it's not, Charles. Let me explain it. It's not at all. There's nothing technical about that situation. Because see, there's a reason that INEC itself, has the requirement that these ballot papers be authenticated by the electoral officers. There's a reason for that. Because if that's not done, you can imagine a situation where anyone who has physical, power can actually overcome a polling unit and bring ballot papers from elsewhere, printed from anywhere.
Well, which used to happen in the past.
Which used to happen in the past, and which is part of the reason, part of the innovation and the reform that we are witnessing, is that INEC insists that these ballot papers be authenticated.
Yeah, but INEC didn't insist. They authenticated it by admitting it as a valid ballot.
Charles, hear me out.
Yeah,
hear me
okay,
out
go on.
No, that is not the case. As a matter of fact, our position and our understanding and the facts of the situation in Kano are that these ballot papers were illegally, unlawfully procured and delivered and counted.
You mean with the connivance of INEC?
You know what? This is APC.
That's what you're saying. In effect.
No, I was saying it in my own words.
Right. Okay.
I am Felix Morka. I'm the spokesman of the All Progressives Congress.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that the ballot papers you refer to wasn't just the mistake of INEC. These were intentional efforts to completely pervert the votes in those units where this occurred. Now, I will say no more because, these are matters that are before the courts.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Before the courts.
And
but
I respect
the point I'm making is that it is not simply just a mistake of INEC.
Right.
These were procured outcomes.
Okay.
Which the courts now are saying, we will not, based on the laws of the land, approve for you to actually benefit from.
Well, you have a point there because it's in courts. And I think they've gone on appeal, so
Absolutely.
We're going to have to wait to see what the court decides. But do you think that there is something, as a spokesman of the ruling party and a party that has the reins of government in this country, do you think that there is something desperately wrong with a democracy such as Nigeria, where results of the elections are almost consistently or routinely determined not by the voters and the number of votes that were cast, but by judges and justices?
No, that's not true. I listened to your conversation with the Leonard Silk from Falana. I don't agree with the premise of that question. Now, what are the courts? Again, I ask, why are the courts there? The reason the courts are there is that the Constitution vests in the courts the authority to adjudicate between disputes among citizens and between citizens and the state and other, authorities. Now, when an election is held, there's nowhere in the world where the courts are disempowered or disallowed or, prevented from intervening in legitimate electoral disputes, whether it's the, so-called cradle of the democracy in the United States or in India. Courts weigh in where legitimate cases are brought before it to, discuss. The United States, as we speak, the verdicts of the courts there are still highly in contention, in the United States. Verdicts of the courts either approving or disapproving of, certain electoral conduct or outcome. So, judicial scrutiny is a legitimate undertaken by the court. So my point here, Charles, is that we cannot sit by idly and just say, the courts are dictating our electoral, outcomes. They're not. No, they are adjudicating on electoral disputes presented before them.
Okay.
And that is their legitimate constitutional authority to do so. And so we cannot, otherwise, you know what, Charles?
Right, okay.
Are we suggesting we abolish the courts?
Nobody's suggesting. That's taking it a bit
Absolutely.
sort of the other way.
Okay.
But let me put it this way, and let me ask you this. What would you want to see as reforms as far as the judiciary and elections are concerned in Nigeria? As the party that has the power
Correct.
to institute those reforms.
Okay, you know what? Some of the very fine basis on which the opposition in this country, went to court to challenge all of the, events around the elections, were actually, maybe surprisingly to many Nigerians, were reforms instituted, implemented by the All Progressives Congress, the APC. Is it Bivas? Is it, even INEC's own, institutional provisioning for IREV? Or is it some of these other things we've been discussing that were the subject of, many of these cases before the courts? These were innovations, but we're not done. I agree with you that our electoral process is work in progress. Requires enormous, far-reaching reforms going forward. Are we committed to that? Yes. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to engaging in further reform from where Buhari stopped to further reform our electoral system, because we need to, in order to make our democracy thrive.
Okay.
Our democracy is imperfect today, but it is not perfect anyway.
I am glad you said
Absolutely.
that, and we will hold the APC to that. But let me just move. We've got about 3 minutes or so left.
Great.
Let's turn to other issues. Inflation now at 27.33%, predicted to reach possibly 30% by Christmas. So it is going up, and dangerously so. Food inflation is even worse and is at an all-time high. Do you think the government knows how to deal with those critical issues? Because it just seems to be getting worse.
Charles, first, before I answer your specific question, be rest assured that there's no one in the entire APC institution from the top to the bottom who is not attentive to what is going on in the country, who is not attentive to the fact that Nigerians, deserve, the good life and, need to have access to opportunities, economic opportunities that can actually create wealth and transform, their existence. No one, from President Tinubu to the last, individual at the units of the party, we are well aware. But make no mistake, this president has demonstrated, just as he promised, commitment to tackling these fundamental problems of the economy and of our country. Now, take for example, since his inauguration, the president has been in India, he's been in Saudi Arabia, he's been now in Germany as we speak. What is he doing? Again, trying to rally support from the international investment community to bring investment to this country. Because, unfortunately, some of the problems we're dealing with here were generationally created, from the beginning because of our, consistent over-reliance on oil. That is nobody even in private lives. People tend to, have multiple streams of income. People do have passive income, they have active income. all to, make ends meet. A country is no different. This country has operated on that mono product called oil, but it's no longer sustainable. This government, which is why the president is, out all the time, really asking and, trying to convince the investment international community to bring their resources here. I think that despite the transient troubles and the pain that Nigerians are going through, I know that one day, Charles, I'm going to be sitting here before you where we are smiling and saying, it looks like things are looking up.
Okay, well,
that is my hope and my confidence.
Well, I hope that comes to be, because there's a lot of concern, and I wanted to talk to you about this, but I've been told we're out of time, about the cost of governance and what you're doing about it to cut it back. Your supplementary budget and all the rest of it, where we're seeing what appears to be belt-tightening measures required of the Nigerian people, but not of the government. I mean, you've got 30 seconds to answer that.
Charles, we must, I think, defer the answer to that question until a proper time when you can actually, put the cost of government on one side and the value created on the other side.
Okay.
I know, in due time, the value created will far outstrip the cost of governance you refer to.
Okay. On that note, it's brilliant talking with you. Barrister Felix Morka is the National Publicity Secretary of the ruling APC party. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.